Hello and welcome to this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and we have two guests today, sort of parting gifts for them, if they will. Chief Joseph Cordeiro joining us for the first half of the show, the Chief Financial Officer, Ari Skye, joining us for the second part of the show. Both men are leaving the city. The Chief is retiring, and Ari, of course, will be moving on to Lakeville. But first, Chief, congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show with you.
Has it set in yet?
No. Probably a couple of days. Once I'm gone, it'll probably start to set in.
You've been chief now for 5 years, roughly, an officer for 35. Pretty much your whole adult life. It's got to be, when you look back, it must have went quick when you really think about it.
Yeah, 35 years has gone pretty quick. When you're going through it, there's parts of it that you're dragging out and you start counting how many more years you got left to retire.
Yeah.
And then there's other parts that you're riding pretty high and you're saying, I could do this for, forever. But it's a young man's game without question in every level of the department.
Is there a difference between, as you talk about that, it's a young man's game physically, but obviously the experience is huge too. How does that balance out?
Yeah, that's interesting because, like I was explaining to you before the show started, the longer you stay in, it's like being in a microwave, right? You're cooking from the inside out, and you can't see where you're cooking. But the longer you stay, the more experience you get. But that's not always necessarily true because we have some folks on our job with 5 years on a job, but they got like 20 years of experience because just the way it's worked out, the type of calls that they've gone, how they've applied themselves. And then you can have someone with 20 years of service with less than 5 years of experience because they just either haven't applied themselves or didn't have the opportunity to have those experiences. But experience plays a big part when you start to get into, the higher level of management. But even on the street, transitioning that wisdom and information to the younger officers, the newer officers coming on the department.
Did you, obviously, you started, as you were telling me, at 22 as an officer. The years that you served on the streets and going through the ranks, they must have obviously be critical to not just your success, but any chief's success, starting that really low man on the totem pole.
Absolutely, but it's changing too for policing. But I think the more experience you have within your department, the more diverse experience, and I was very fortunate, not only do patrol, but manage and command other units in the department, specialized units like narcotics and things of that nature. The more expansive and diverse your experience is within the department, I think you're better posed to lead the department, having a full working understanding of all the varying components and what it takes to run those.
And people, just the different jobs.
And people, absolutely.
As you think back to, and I asked you this and I was kind of surprised, when you first started, you had no ambition of being chief. That wasn't something that was on your radar.
No, when I started this job, I had my own business, and I was coming to work here. I was doing two jobs like I've done most of my life, and I thought, I'd take some promotional exams and, work my way up. And then when I got close to the captain's title, I said, I'll probably be it. And then I was starting to look at other departments, maybe being a chief. And then, unfortunately, Chief Provencher passed unexpectedly, and this position came open. And by divine intervention, I swear that's how I got this role. I never thought I'd be the chief of the New Bedford Police Department. And
you're a hometown kid. So that there must be a great sense of, for you, pride in that local kid achieved that position.
Well, absolutely, pride not only for being the local kid. I just love this city. I love the people. This city embraced my family when we came here from Portugal, and they gave us so much opportunity, my brother, my sister, myself, and my parents, they worked hard here. So the city's been great to my entire family. It just feels real good to serve, period. But at this level, even more so. And then being the first Portuguese immigrant, I think first immigrant, period, to hold this position, it comes with a lot of responsibility. It brings me a lot of pride and joy.
What does it mean to you, though, to have that said about you, first immigrant, to hold that position?
It means a lot because coming here from another country, as many of the immigrants that are here now, and those that have come before me, whether they're Italian, Irish, you know what it's like when you go to a new country, and you know the challenges. And to be able to reach this level, I think that says to not only immigrants in this country right now, but those that are born in this country, regardless of where you're born. We didn't come of very high means. We were poor. It doesn't matter what neighborhood you live in. You can really do anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I came here with my family, and I'm the police chief. We were poor, and we weren't rich by any stretch of imagination. And I made it to this level. You can do whatever you want, whether it's be the police chief, a doctor, a nurse, an entrepreneur. There's nothing standing in your way except your own dream.
Yeah. And as you mentioned too, I mean, your family made sacrifices too with you getting the position, which is, and you credited them off camera. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my mom, my dad, the sacrifices they made to come to this country with the clothes on their backs, with the only language they knew, Portuguese, to come to a foreign country and start anew to give their 3 kids a better opportunity at education and in life. Yeah, you can't help but feeling that their sacrifices weren't for nothing.
Right.
They get some return on their investment. And unfortunately, my mom couldn't really appreciate that when I got promoted to chief, because she was suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. But I know where she's at right now. I can sense her pride and her gratification for the sacrifices that her and my dad made.
Talk to me a little bit about, as you look at your career, what are some of the highlights? What are some of the things that you're most proud of?
There's probably a lot of things I'm proud of and some things that I'm not so much proud of. But the thing I'm most proud of is the opportunities I've had to help people. That's where I've gained the biggest joy and gratification is from that, and the relationships that I've made with people across the city from all walks of life, all socioeconomic positions in life, that when I walk through the city, I'm at a restaurant, people just come up and give me a hug or thank me or say hello. That's the world to me.
Is there anything as chief, when you started, that you've accomplished that you say, I did it, that's what I wanted to do? Is there any 1 or 2 things that you look back on in your 5-year tenure that said, mission accomplished on that point?
There's a lot of things, Jim, that we were able to accomplish over the last 5 years. It's a really long list that we were really able to do. Not enough time for us to go through it. So I would have to say the thing that really stands at the top of the forefront for me is our community policing, to change the relationship that the police department has with the community and set a culture that hopefully will continue of everybody working together as a city of one, as I said on the day I got sworn in. All the other stuff, there's a lot of really good stuff that we put in play to help people here, from addressing the opioid crisis, modernizing the police department, community relations, public relations. There's a whole slew of stuff, but to me, in life and everything that we do, it comes down to relationships.
Well, your job is really just one-on-one when you really think about it. I can't. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of jobs that are just one-on-one, but for you, it's one. Not just you, but your staff, your department, one person talking to another one person.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. Without good relationships, you can't solve nothing, whether it's policing or in the business world.
Yeah.
It's all about relationship, communication, and listening to other people. And I think that's something we've done very well with our community, especially during last year with the protests we've seen across the country. We went through 21 straight days of protests from 11 in the morning till midnight and sometimes beyond. We're making 2 or 3 arrests. No vandalism, no property damage. Officers weren't injured. We did that because of relationship building, of trust between police and community.
Anything surprise you that you weren't expecting as chief?
There's there's some things that really surprised me. The negativity that was born upon me and my family was quite surprising. No other chief has seen that in 35 years here. And the other thing that was positively surprising was, again, in 35 years, I've never seen a chief have the support of the people as I have, which I'm completely grateful for. And that's why I just love the people of the city. And I'm grateful for all the support and love that they gave me. I couldn't do none of it without their help. Nor would have I survived 5 years without them. Really.
Yeah. Is there any thing that you look right now that's in the process, but you didn't finish, or you didn't, anything that you still want to do that you hope continues right now? I mean, I know there's still, you still want to move on, but is there any one particular thing, program or what have you, that didn't get to, or you hope still gets, that's in its infancy and you hope moves on?
Right, so that's the thing about this job, and I was talking to a couple of chiefs about that. They're also on the brink of leaving, and the job's never done. The crisis is never done. There's a project that's never done. Your vision is, if you're truly in this position, your vision is never completed. So for me, what I think that I hope the most that continues here, and if I'd stay here 5 more years, I think I'd be able to accomplish, is to continue the cultural shift in this department. We can buy equipment, we can give additional benefits, but until we continue to change the hearts and the minds of the men and women that work in the police department to continue to develop empathy for the people that we serve, that philosophical shift is where I hope the department continues. Because when we start to deliver our services, not just with our minds, it has to be touched in with our hearts. The heart and mind working collectively in how we police and service our community. That cultural shift needs to continue.
How is the job as a police officer? I'm not talking chief, but because you've been the officer, how has that changed in the 35 years? I know it's a lot, but as you talk about, is the empathy, the mind, you would think that that'd always be part of the job. But it probably, not that it isn't, but the culture, as you're talking about, from 35 years ago is probably a lot different than it is now, just because of society.
Absolutely. We've gone from, when I came on as an enforcer, predominantly as an enforcer, a warrior, with a little bit of public relations, as when I went through the academy, said everybody's a public relations officer, but in reality the culture itself was more on that end. Today we're shifting towards a guardian mindset. A guardian that can be an enforcer would needs to be a warrior when you need to be, but primarily a guardian, an advocate, a counselor, a community member. When we start to see ourselves as the community and not the police enforcing, but serving. When we make that complete transition, and that's the difference from 35 years ago, 45 years ago to where we are today, and hopefully where we'll be in 5 or 10 years from now, is completely in a guardian, total collaborate partnership role with the community.
I would say too that probably the issues that you're facing may be the same, but they're different in that, you're dealing with a lot more societal issues, mental health right off the bat. I guess, 40 years ago, that probably wasn't big on the police department's radar, but I would assume that now that's a huge part of your job.
Absolutely. Well, as you'll remember, back then all the mental health institutions were still open. Many of the folks were housed in there.
Yeah.
When they closed, they were put out to the streets, which became more voluminous of a problem for us. Again, one of the things we've done here in New Bedford, we have 3 full-time and 1 part-time mental health clinician working with our police department in cruises that we partnered with North Star, Child Family Services, and recently High Point, which is really an anomaly in this region. We're ahead of the game, as so many other things that we've done in 5 years, from our LEAD program being the first in the state of Massachusetts. We have a human trafficking task force that is, again, an anomaly in this region. There's so many firsts that we put in play in the last 5 years that really puts the department in a very good position.
The Meet NBPD episode that I thought was interesting was your episode with the pastors.
Yes.
And I don't think people see the religion aspect of the job, but it's obviously that episode showed how big an aspect that is to the job.
For a lot of reasons. For our officers, their health and well-being. Now, they don't have to partake, it's voluntarily, but there are a lot of folks that came into this business with a faith-based mindset, and it's easy to lose doing this job because you see the worst of humanity. It's easy to walk away from that. Where you can reintroduce, give them the opportunity to reconnect if they want, or give them an opportunity just to be able to have someone to speak to about things. A way to vent is very healthy. And if more officers were engaged in whatever faith they are and involved, and if you're following whatever God you follow, his rules or her rules, you don't need my policies and procedures, because those golden rules are certainly going to be, mine are going to be in those parameters, and they're going to treat people very well.
Last thing before you go, well, 2 last thing. 1, is there any one moment in your 35-year career that really stands out right now with you? Any one moment when you look back and say, That's something I'll remember forever?
There's a lot of moments. There's a little boy, Joey, I talk about all the time. There's a little blonde girl on County Street, 2 freshmen when I first came on. Her, we had to call the ACF on a Friday night. I went home and I was heartbroken that I couldn't take her home with me. And the other little boy was sexually abused, and I run into him like 7 years later at the parade at Buttonwood Park, and he yelled out, "Hey, Joey," because we both had the same name. And then I realized that a small moment of time, he remembered me and I remembered him, and how much of an impact we can have on each other, even for brief moments of time. And that's the responsibility our officers have to start to realize, how much we impact individuals in their life.
In one moment.
In one moment.
Retirement, what does that look like for you? You'll still be around here, obviously.
Well, I think a couple months in Florida, and I'm going to rethink of how else I can serve the people in New Bedford. I tell people all the time, Jesus put me here. He'll lead, I'll follow wherever he sends me. So if it's missionary work, I'd love to do some of that. If it's whatever it is in the city serving, I'd love to do that as well. That's how I was brought up. My family my mom was big on service. So, and that's where I get my biggest kick. I love to serve.
Thanks for coming in and doing the show.
Thank you, Jim.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back with more City Hall Insider. Ari Skyer will be our guest coming up in a moment. Hello, welcome back to City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall, and joining us for this portion of the program, a return guest, our Chief Financial Officer, Ari Skyer. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back. We're here, we just had the Chief on talking about his plans and announcement, and you obviously are going on to greener pastures, and
I feel like I'm sitting down for an exit interview.
exit interview. Congratulations, though.
Thank you.
You were the first chief financial officer for the city, and I can't help but think, when I first met you, and you met all the department heads and stuff. I mean, you started a department really from scratch. Mm-hmm. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced coming in?
Well, one of the risks in this kind of job is that you're not going to have the support of management. In this case, I did, so that helped a lot. This was part of the mayor's vision. City council was on board, and there was a perceived need, and I think it was accurate, for someone who would be sort of a truth teller as far as data and information goes, so that everybody could work from the same set of information and it wouldn't be politicized. So I had a clear mandate coming in to kind of create that environment and manage those processes. And over the years, working with the city council and with the mayor, that we've managed to build that kind of structure and that format. I say that it's kind of a funny story. I remember when I first started, it was March of 2013, and I came in and I realized the first thing I learned was that nothing had been done to prepare the FY14 budget.
And you didn't even have an office, by the way.
Right? No, I didn't have an office. I was sharing the office where the auditors were. Yeah. So so we're here in March. The budget, which has to go to the city council mid-May, and no one has even
touched it.
So the first few months were kind of a fire drill. Then the other thing that the mayor and I had both agreed we really wanted to do was get policies and procedures in place, both for internal use, for legacy, for the rating agencies, and everything, and all that sort of thing, and to start to develop a program that would allow us to deal with some of our deferred maintenance needs and infrastructure. So the next thing I did was work on the capital program, and we did that over the fall. Created a whole process for that called the capital needs assessment. We go out to departments, we get a 2-year idea of what their needs are, and we kind of structure something that's a 5-year program, and that gives us a framework going forward. And that enabled me, we went to the rating agencies later that year, early 2014, to provide them with our capital program, which the city never had before, a long-range plan, which it never had before, and we also adopted a number of policies dealing with the kind of things that the rating agencies look for, things like post-retirement costs, financial practices, things like that, debt fund management, and so on. And the rating agencies were impressed enough that they gave a ratings upgrade to a city which had been stuck at a certain rating for a very long time. Had this new had this new CFO in who'd only been there for at that point about 10 months, and they went ahead and gave us a ratings upgrade anyway. And that enabled everything to be that really got the ball rolling in terms of our ability to be able to finance projects and move forward. So there's lots of, I feel a real sense of accomplishment with some of the things we managed to do.
You, in the one thing I think that's interesting about your job is you deal with every single department.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you learn pretty much. In one way, that's got to be fascinating. That
Mm-hmm.
different aspects of whether it's facilities and fleet management or cable access or what have you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've had to learn their departments, and
so it's an interesting point, and it's probably part of the explanation for why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm moving on. Because I went to grad school to be a general manager, to be a manager. I wanted my career goal was to become a city manager or a town manager or something like that. People I really respect gave me some advice, said coming out of grad school the best thing you can do is get a job in a budget office, because if you're in a budget office you'll touch every part of the organization, every department, and you really understand how everything works. And that's essentially what I do writ large now. But it also kind of locked me into that program. Over the years I kind of moved up through budget offices, became a CFO and so on. But always wanted to be a town manager as well. So I think that level of that type of kind of variety and sort of management laced with finance that I do is one of the reasons why I'm excited about this opportunity that I have. So.
One of the things that you did too that I don't recall ever being done was, you the budget process, which is probably the one document that impacts everybody in the community. You get us together in January, and then you get the council to you're talking to the council. They're part of the process now, which I guess had never been the case.
Right.
It's a team effort when you're putting that document together.
When I first came here, the city actually had no adopted budget document at all. There was a proposed budget document, which was basically a printout from the financial system that was given to the city council, and that was it. There was no sort of supporting management data, no budget letter, no kind of narrative or anything along those lines. So our budget's come a long way. It's now recognized by the Government Finance Office Association. It receives a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award.
I was going to say you've been honored for your budget.
Gone for 4 years running now, which is fairly rarefied atmosphere. There are only about 1,400 localities in the country that get it. So that sounds like a lot, but there are a lot of.
Every town, yeah.
There are hundreds of thousands of municipalities in the country. So it's kind of an indication of the work we've done. And now we have an adopted document, which is also very important because that allows the city council and the mayor to look at what departments are doing, what they plan to do, and measure them against each other. Our document has objectives and has performance measurement in addition to the financials. The thing that is kind of the leap that sometimes has to be encouraged when it comes to budgets is that the budget in itself isn't a goal. The budget is just the expression of all the planning and policy and everything that goes into the operation of the organization. It's just the financial realization of that.
It's a breathing document when you think about it.
Yeah, and so it really is kind of the end state of a process that goes year round, year after year after year. Conversations with the city council, between the mayor and the city council, administration, city council, and staff and staff to staff and so on, to kind of get a sense of what it is that our priorities are and what it is that we're looking to do. And so I think in that sense, I have to ask the mayor himself, but I think in that sense it's been very helpful to the administration in terms of its ability to execute its vision.
What are you most proud of during your tenure? You've done a lot, and again, you started from scratch, but is there any one thing that stands out to you that you sit there and you look back and you're like, I'm glad I did that? I'm glad we did that.
I am very proud of our capital program. We have managed to put together a program that has turned around the condition of our facilities and our vehicles and so on in a really radical way. in the past 8 years. You know, there's been a ton of work that's gone into to our buildings, roof on this building, as a matter of fact, and and our schools, in such a way that has not been a heavy load on the taxpayers. Because what we've done is we've developed a capital program that, for the most part, only takes on debt as debt is retired, and we're able to measure that and gauge that, and we have an idea of how much we can afford to do every year, and that's how we structure it. Occasionally, there'll be a big project. Sort of a catalytic project that will be the exception to that rule. For example, a new school, Jacobs School, that was obviously something that was cost more than we're retiring in any particular year. The South Public Safety Center, which I'm also very proud of. We built a pretty large campus there.
Yeah.
It's not just the building itself, but it's also the annex next to it, which was the former rectory, which is being expanded upon. Is going to be holding a number of staff there, and we kind of built this campus, and we did the whole thing, including land acquisition, for less than $20 million. When I tell people that, they're, you know, outside of the city, they're amazed they were able to do that work. And it's not a building that looks like it was built on the cheap. It's a nice looking building.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of the way we're able to kind of get everybody together, because it required an interdepartmental group, required the support of the city council and the Councilor Lopes from the councilor of that ward, and to really kind of put something together that worked. And the mayor's attention to design and aesthetics really came into play. We had a good architect who knew what they were doing and was able to work within the means that we had to do something that was really special. And that's I have no idea how that would have worked before I came along.
Anything right now that you have started and isn't finished yet that you'd like to see finished, even after you're gone, or continue on?
It's there's always something.
Yeah.
The thing about this job is that it doesn't stop. It's a continual.
You're 24/7.
Yeah.
Really.
And so we're going into another budget year. We're about to receive a whole bunch of federal money through the American Rescue Plan, ARPA, and that's a lot of money coming to the city that there's going to need to be some real due diligence in terms of how it's spent and handled, so that nobody ends up with an audit problem or anything like that. That's it's going to be a need for us for a CFO that really has the mayor's confidence and has his attention on that. So in that sense, there's always going to be something, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
You've got about a minute to go, but I mean, you've ingrained yourself in the community. You've lived here, your family's lived here.
Yeah. I'm not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere, but even though you're leaving to go to another position, neighboring town, but are you in New Bedford? Do you feel
Yeah, we love New Bedford. We really do. We love living here. We have a house that's about 100 years old. It's a gorgeous old house. We put a lot of money into it, a lot of research, a lot of effort and time. We love the community. It's just got the sort of the historic and the historic and aesthetic flavor of the place. We've become very attached to New Bedford.
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with you. That's for sure.
Likewise.
You will be missed.
Likewise. Thanks, Jim.
So we will hopefully talk again down the road at some point, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I'll be around.
That's going to do it for this edition of City Hall Insider. My thanks to Chief Cordeiro. My thanks to Ari for coming in as well. And we will talk to you again soon.